Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. Today I'm going to talk about optimizing your chances of getting merchant accounts. Before we get started, please subscribe. We got lots of great videos for you. Click the notification bell and let's get into it. All right, so I have lots of clients who are in the e-commerce space, right? So they've got some sort of an online store. And it's interesting, I was helping someone a few weeks ago and it really made me think about how unaware people are about the things that they should do to optimize getting a merchant account, and also probably boost their conversions in the process and maybe optimize the image of their store. So what I get to see when we're helping people with getting merchant accounts is you're in a situation where very, very often there's a lot of data that we have to collect, okay? And sometimes we have these checklists that we have to go down. And these are essentially kind of like risk factors for the bank. Okay, so you may think, oh, hey, listen, what's wrong with my store? Well, let's go through some of the things that are helpful. So first of all, do you list the legal entity of your business on your store? Okay, do you have that there? Because sometimes people don't, right? They'll have a terms and conditions, a privacy policy, etc., but they won't actually list out, hey, here's the company that's involved. Number two, do you have your address listed there? This is quite important. I'll do another video in the future about different bank risk requirements and kind of going through some of the analysis that banks do based on some of their risk checklists. But generally, having a physical location that people can say, and this is a contact location, is helpful, okay? Number three, do you have a phone number listed? Like what's the ability of people to contact you, okay? So it is helpful, even if somebody won't call, even if when they call, they get a nice voice at the other end that, says, hi, all of our operators are busy, please leave a message, we're gonna call you back, whatever. You can hire somebody on Fiverr to do a little recording for you, no problem, and upload it to some sort of a VoIP service and, automate it, and then you can respond back. I've seen people where they've got the nice voicemail, and then they simply respond by email, right? Perfect, no big deal. The point is, it's certainly helpful to do that. What are some other things? Okay, as you're going through the checkout process, what is your refund policy, for one? And is your refund policy very clearly stated? Okay, very, very important. There is some court cases that have looked at if people repeatedly say things that kind of appear deceptive and then they have some fine print at the end, that doesn't count. They're gonna go with, hey, listen, this is deceptive advertising, okay? So merchant providers are gonna look for something similar, okay? Are you in a situation where you have subscription services? If so, is it very obvious what the subscription service is, that they're signing up for the subscription service, and how to cancel, right? It's very common that merchant providers would ask for back-end login credentials to be able to take a look at what the customer portal is like, what the ability is to observe what all is going on, etc. Okay, so very, very important things in this whole array. What are some other pieces that you can pay attention to? Well, what is your business model in general? Okay, so your business model in general should be, ideally, number one, that you can say, hey, listen, we're selling something, and that something is, we warehouse it, okay? So the difference between, you can kind of look at, we don't warehouse it, we warehouse it. Don't warehousing it is higher risk than warehousing it, okay? Now, what is that going to mean from the perspective of getting the merchant account? That's going to mean you're going to want to provide the backup documentation for this. So when you're going through, we'll talk in a minute about the documentation that you should have in order to optimize your chances, and this in turn is going to help you to lower your rates, as well as presenting, just a general strong business case. All right. So warehouse versus dropship, they prefer warehouse, okay, for sure. Having some sort of a trial offer versus not a trial trial offers, they don't like them as much. Subscription versus non-subscription, straight sale, we'll say, they prefer straight sale. All right, so these things are important in considering. Now, I'm not saying don't have a subscription. Subscription can be a great way to make money. You can work out very, very well. Just be aware that from the perspective of a merchant account, this is a concern. And you want to make it really obvious and easy how to unsubscribe, and you should make it very obvious to people when they're going to get billed. So one of the things that we tend to have, say as an entrepreneur, is I may sit there and I may say, oh, I don't want to let people know that their card's going to get billed in a minute because I'm hoping they're going to forget about it and they're going to get billed. Well, what does that do? That raises the chargeback rates, right? Chargeback rates, not good. So we've seen some recent, over the last few years, changes in Visa and MasterCard's policies, specifically spelling out how you should be approaching this if you want to have recurring billing. Okay, so recurring billing is a big thing that you want to be very careful how you manage it. Obviously, you don't want to have things that are like fraudulent testimonials and attributions, etc. That's going to just make you look shady. Okay, so the name of the game here is you want to look very credible, very not shady. The way that I recommend people do this in general for creating a good site, something that looks good, etc., is find a site that's kind of comparable, not necessarily in the same industry, but like it looks good, it looks great, it's a big professional brand, and copy them. Okay, take exactly, like I would literally tell a designer, I would say, hey, listen, copy their site exactly, and then we're going to change out our content. We're going to put our images, we're going to put our phone numbers, our brand, etc., all with just our colors, but it's going to look very clean like this. Let's copy their their checkout process, right? Then we're going to look at what is the situation in terms of customer service, right? Being able to deal with that. Just keep in mind here, right? Banks hate chargebacks. So you can ask yourself, what are things that are likely to cause chargebacks? Okay? And I'm likely to have a chargeback if I can't easily get in touch with you to get a refund, if I ended up being billed for something that I didn't intend to pay for, right? If I didn't get my product on time, right? So this is another part. Okay, how do we clearly communicate the timeline that the person should expect to get their product? Be aware that Amazon has conditioned people in places like the US for like next day delivery. So if you're saying, hey, look, I have a 30-day shipping time, even if you clearly say, hey, I have a 30-day shipping time, even if you have a policy where you contact them a few times and you say, hey, listen, just to let you know, we've received your order, it's being shipped, it's going to come in 30 days, etc. Even if that's the case, the reality is that in that situation, they're far more likely to cancel, to say, oh, I forgot about it, oh, I don't want it, etc., etc. And as a result, they're going to go, well, hang on a minute, I better, I'm going to try and cancel it. And sometimes it's much easier for them to call their credit card company and dispute it as opposed to calling you and handling it on the other side. So this comes to another side, and this is especially true in high risk, is how do you verify their identity? Now, if you're in low risk businesses, this is probably not a big issue, right? But it may factor into your checkout process. So you may be able to say, hey, listen, I don't need to collect a phone number, I don't need to collect an email address, or well, you probably need to collect an email address, but maybe not. Maybe I'm selling a digital product, so I don't really need an address. I want to remove as many fields as possible in order to optimize my conversion rate. Okay, but realize that the consequence of that is your identity verification also goes down, right? You're more exposed to fraudulent transactions. So anyway, I hope some of those kind of give you a high-level sense. Let's talk about the documents that you're going to need, okay? Unfortunately, it's very nonsense, but it's the way that it is. So realize from the beginning that you want everything to match. They're very anal about what they go over here. They're very anal about subtle little details. For instance, there's a case, we had a client who they moved, and so the business had their old address on it as compared to, so there was basically a conflict. There was two versions of that address. That needs to be really clear. Really clearly laid out. Hey, here's my registered address, here's my actual address, here's my proof of address. So we're going to go through this. All right, so it starts out with the business. You need the business documents. Business documents are probably going to need to be in a language that is workable for them, which means, unfortunately, if you're in a country like Denmark or Bulgaria or Hungary, etc., you may be at a disadvantage because you may have to get those documents translated, okay? If you have to get them translated, you may have to get some sort of a certified translation. So as much as possible, if you can have them in multiple languages, great. If you can have them in the language that you're working with, or if you can get a local provider, perfect, okay? So that's number one, you need your corporate documents. These are going to probably require a register of directors and shareholders. So something that tells that currently you are the owner, you are the shareholder. Shareholder, you're the director, okay? So you're probably going to need that. And usually that has to be current within 3 months, okay? That may need to be certified, depends on the situation. Next, you're probably going to have some sort of a certificate of good standing. So is the company actually in good standing? All right, that's the next piece. Great, perfect, we've got that. Now, from there, you're going to want to show if you had any previous processing, and it's much better if you did. It's going to make your life far, far easier. Then you're going to want to show the last 3 to 6 months of processing statements. This gets a little bit complicated because some processors do not make it easy for you to provide this detailed information, okay? So for instance, you may say, oh great, I'm going to go download my list of transactions. Well, that doesn't qualify as a statement. So then usually what you're going to do is you're going to have to take screenshots, okay? And the screenshots need to show, probably you want to show the URL and the logo. So for instance, I may log into my Stripe portal and I may provide this information, right? I may also want to provide you, say, a list of transactions, etc. We're going to get in a minute to the type of detail that they want, okay? So, okay, great, that's from there. Next, you're going to want bank statements, okay? Those bank statements, you're going to want at least the last 3 to 6 months of bank statements. Again, you're ideally going to want to see that these bank statements are translated and that they have the bank, like you can see that it's from the bank. So this is usually going to include, again, ideally a URL if that's like a screenshot. Often they won't accept screenshots, okay, so be aware of that. They oftentimes want it in a PDF form, so you want some downloadable PDF. You want to have your name or the business name, the address, and the bank logo, bank's address information on there, okay, very important. Okay, what's next? This brings us into some details about your business, okay? So first of all, we're going to ask, what is your processing volume, okay? How much do you process per month? What is your average ticket size? So, and when we look at processing volume, we're going to talk about dollar volume, okay, and number of transactions. Okay, these are both an issue. High ticket size, meaning somebody who's paying you $3,000 in a transaction as opposed to $50, is going to be considered higher risk. And the reason is, if somebody charges back, they're going to measure chargeback rates typically in 2 ways. One is the percentage of the transactions that get charged back or disputed. The second is the percentage of the dollar volume. So let's say that you process a whole bunch of small transactions and a few big transactions. Okay, say for that month it equals $100,000. Okay, but the guy who charged back had a $3,000 item that they're charging back. Well, that's a 3% chargeback rate as a percentage of sales volume. Okay, so even though maybe you sold a bunch of things for $50, and so as a percentage of the total number of transactions, it's low. As a percentage of the volume, it's high. Okay, so be aware of that as well. Okay, what else do we have that we can go into here? So they want to know those things. They're going to want to know what currencies you're charging in, where your customers are. Ideally, they want to know what the percentages are, breakdown. So you're like, okay, there's 70% US, there's 20% UK, and 10% around the rest of the world, right? For instance. And again, this is part of the reason why if you can provide your processing statements, it simplifies them being able to see that. In a perfect world, we want to know what is the breakdown of Visa, MasterCard, Amex, whatever other cards. Maybe you're in a place that you have Giro card or whatever. You know, you get lots of different payment options. So you want to know that, right? That's the next thing. Then we want to know what is the business model, okay? So this is, do you simply sell items? Do you sell items and then have a subscription? Do you have both? You know, how does that work, right? Then we want to know what are the things that you're selling, right? And they're going to look at your store and they're going to go through, for instance, item by item. Let's say that you're in the health space. They're going to go through item by item and they're going to look at the ingredients on those products. So, I mean, you can provide that to them in any number of ways. I find that it helps if you can provide a very well organized package to them so they can say, hey, listen, here's what we've got. This is very nice, clean, clear, easy, good to go. All right, so that's something that's to be aware of. If you have some sort of a business, it may involve, they are sometimes where they have like business inspection reports, right? So they literally, okay, have you been to the business? Do they have signage? Does it look like, you know, things are the way that they're supposed to be? What are the operating hours, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So these things can all come into that picture, right? Then we're going to look at your suppliers, right? Again, having some sort of fulfillment contracts are important. things that prove the validity of your business. You have to understand there's a lot of fraud out there. And so they're looking for ways to identify whether there's some sort of fraud in this whole thing. All right, so having contracts, being able to say, here's where we have our warehousing, here's where we source from our suppliers, et cetera, this is all important, right? And they're gonna look for all of this stuff to align. So that kind of gives you some sense. Let's see here, what else are the things? Okay, now we get into your personal stuff, right? So they may require your personal bank statements. This is especially true if you have a new company, you don't have bank statements. Processors like people who have a lot of history, who have big volumes. That's basically what they like, right? Because they can say, oh, great, this is a good customer. We can see it's a good customer. It's very obvious what's happening. If you're new, they don't know. So they're probably going to charge you higher rates. They're going to make it more of a hassle for you. They're going to say, well, it takes us 30 hours to onboard a client. So is it really worth it if you're only going to process $2,000 a month, et cetera? So you're going to have to come out and say, okay, well, here's what we're having. Now, in some cases, they want like a marketing plan. It's insane because it's total nonsense, but sometimes they want this or some sort of a business plan. Now, in reality, their business plan things are very simplified, right? But be aware that these are parts of the process of the system. Okay, anything else that we need to look at? Yeah, so your personal identifying documents are going to be part of this. So this is two things. One is, of course, your ID, so passport, driver's license, local residency card, etc., as well as your proof of address. So proof of address is typically going to be some sort of a utility bill, okay? Same thing is true when you're looking at the business. You're going to want some sort of a proof of address, okay? This can be hard to get because oftentimes you just don't have some clear proof of address, right? This can usually go away when you say, well, the business is operating out of my personal address, right? So you say, okay, I'm here, business is here, it's home-based business. They don't tend to like home-based businesses, but this is the way that it goes. So anyway, that's pretty much a pretty good detail of the types of things that they want. They want to know the product prices, yeah. So that's all going to be the case. Yeah, pretty much. Now, some of this you have to understand that people are making this decision. It's not usually algorithmic. Okay, there's people involved in this. So your ability to make a very compelling case can help quite a bit, right? If you can come and you can say, hey, listen, here we've got some existing processing, we're good to go in that sense. Hey, look at, we've got some award-winning customer service, we've got awards for whatever. These types of, this type of PR, et cetera, can help to build your story. So that can be helpful as well. And I think it goes both ways. I think it helps to build the story from a customer conversion standpoint, so that's helpful, and from the standpoint of payment processing. So anyway, I hope this gives you some sense of some of the things that you want to be aware of that can help to prepare you to optimize your case, all right? And just make it you just think from the perspective of how can I be more credible, right? Things that people may, pictures from the office, pictures from, your location, stories of happy people, happy customers, employees, pictures of your employees, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, those are a few things. I hope that helps you. We're going to, discuss a little bit more about payment processing in some future videos. If you want help with that, first of all, subscribe to the channel. If this was interesting to you, and if you have some questions, please write it down below. If you'd want some specific help, you can check some links below. You can reach out to me, clarity.fm/Michael Rosmer to book a call. You can visit offshorecitizen.net, offshorecapitalist.com. We got tons of content there. Citizenships, residencies, payment processing, companies, bank accounts, international tax planning to reduce your taxes as much as legally possible, asset protection. That's pretty much the gamut. So anyway, I hope that's helpful. We'll see you guys on the next video.